All right, good morning, good evening, everyone. Uh, Alcor is pleased to welcome you all to today's webinar, Stop Chasing Vulnerabilities and Start Securing Your Business. During this webinar, our speakers will discuss how our vulnerability management program help organizations reduce risk, enhance compliance, and improve operational resilience, all supported by a team that functions as an extension of your security organization. Please note that we have time reserved at the end of the webinar for Q&A. So please feel free to type your questions into the question section of the webinar dashboard.
Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. Thanks for joining us. We're excited to show you guys what we've been building, and more importantly, how our partnership with Armis is helping us take vulnerability management to the next level. My name is Andrew Johnson, and I'm the Global Cybersecurity Program Manager here at Alcor. I have over 10 years in vulnerability management and bringing teams together globally. With me today is Terrence Davis from Armis and Brent Knipfer, Alcor's Chief Technology Officer. Terrence?
Hi, everybody, and it's a pleasure to talk to each and every one of you, and I thank you for joining us today. My name is Terrence Davis. I'm a technical sales engineering lead for Armis and a senior solutions architect, and I've been in the business of security and networking for over 4 decades. I know it's a long time. Don't try to do the math. It's unfair. But I've touched everything from SIMs to firewalls to SNMP managers, vulnerability management, remediation platforms, and on and on. And it's a pleasure to join Alcor today to talk to you about what the Armis and Alcor partnership will be able to do to help you. Thank you.
So recently we partnered with Armis. They're an incredible remediation platform and leader in risk exposure management. I'm happy to hand the mic over to Terrence. He's going to tell you guys a little bit more about Armis-centric and this amazing platform.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And I'm really going to start with early warning, but I'm going to go through the entire platform so that you have a really good foundation or understanding of what Alcor is using in order to provide the services in that partnership that Armis and Alcor have created together. So early warning, it's really a list of vulnerabilities that we see through our intelligence gathering and the reconnaissance of bad actors. And what I really mean by that, and it's pretty in depth, is what we do is look for we take screen scrapes of the dark web and the clear web, and we start looking at the actual bad actors, understanding who those individuals are, not stepping back from a sense of, oh, what is happening in the world, but what is happening in their lives? What are they trying to accomplish through the exposure of a specific vulnerability? And we'll even set up things like honeypots, so utilizing deceptive technologies in order to gather that intelligence to understand where they're at in the process of creating an exploit against a specific vulnerability. The reason for that is in the geopolitical state that we're in right now, there's a lot of intelligence coming out of places like Russia and North Korea, where we start to understand that they're specifically looking at lower risk or lower CVSS scored vulnerabilities. And the reason they're doing that is they understand that, from the sense of remediation of vulnerabilities, we always look at critical and highs. And critical and highs, of course, need to be remediated. But in their case, they're looking for ways to slip in under the radar. And so they'll really focus on those lower end, those below 7 CVSS scored vulnerabilities to start to create these exploits. And we're trying to catch them, seeing exactly what that exploit looks like, understanding if the rootkit is available, how that rootkit is made available, understanding everything that we can about, again, the bad actor itself, the vulnerability that they're trying to exploit, and the exploitation of that vulnerability to gain an understanding of when that exploit will be occurring. So from that standpoint, we take that information and move into Viper. and we call it Viper Pro, Viper. It's a tool that really allows us to prioritize remediation against not just vulnerabilities, but any kind of risks. So think of things like misconfigurations of devices. Think of DAST and SaaS and cloud information coming in so that we can really get an understanding of, number one, how to prioritize those vulnerabilities, those misconfigurations, those weakness enumerations. Who are the players that are involved, the business units of responsibility that need to be working on that? Who is the security officer in case there's a need for any kind of risk acceptance? And focusing on the automation of all these tools so that we can start ticketing those processes and get people out of the way of slowing down progress when it comes to remediation vulnerabilities. With that, the next three pieces that you see here, asset management and security, medical device security, and OT and IoT security, those are the Centrix platform. Those all three are really the same thing. The differences being that we will turn specific flags on for help in understanding the protocols in use by OT and IoT, and in medical devices, giving you the ability to look at utilizations, things like that. So asset management and security, or AMS, is the tool that allows us to gather the information and the telemetry of understanding the asset, understanding the risk of the asset, and really understanding the vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, and everything about the asset so that we can focus on how do we make you safer. And this entire platform is really what Alcor is using in order to help all of their customers and all of you that could be prospects of Alcor to get a better handle on the risk and the exposure of risk that you holistically have in your environment. Andrew, appreciate it, and thank you very much for allowing me to explain that to all of your listeners.
Thank you for that, Terrence. So with that being said, why Alcor? Right? We truly believe in a hands-on consultative approach, right? Not just flagging the vulnerabilities, but actually helping you understand and fix them in context. So we help you build the governance frameworks, enable smarter risk decisions, and bring structure to processes you probably overlook. Whether it's integrating any real-time threat intelligence, supporting risk acceptance workflows, or thinking outside the box by tackling persistent issues like golden image flaws, we go way beyond the scan. And what really makes us different is we connect the dots across teams, we break down the silos, and we help drive that remediation forward with accountability, expertise, and real partnership. What are some of the key challenges in vulnerability management today? So traditional vulnerability discovery tools are inadequate. We all know this. The problem with traditional scanning solutions is they can only discover and tell you which assets have open vulnerabilities. They can't sort vulnerable assets based on the risk to the business or any ongoing operations, which makes it all but impossible to remediate those vulnerabilities. And I'm willing to bet you're overwhelmed by the number of assets and the growing number of vulnerabilities on them, right? You're flooded with thousands of critical vulnerabilities, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to know how to prioritize them. So with the power of Armis, we start looking not at vulnerabilities, but individual fixes. Instead of dealing with 2 million unique vulnerabilities, for instance, you're potentially looking at 400 unique fixes that will address all of these issues. And simple lack of process management. Right? This is my favorite. Even today, most organizations, their most common tool to track vulnerabilities is Excel. Right? Do-it-yourself approaches like manually downloading, correlating, and normalizing all this data from various platforms, it's not practical. These type of efforts are not only prone to human error, but they also deliver point-in-time data that's usually incomplete, driving your mean time to remediation completely into the ground. So how do we address this? We have a very simple methodology. Detect, prioritize, remediate, report. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into these. So this is where it all starts, with visibility. We begin by mapping everything in the environment, cloud, on-prem, hybrid. If it's there, we're going to find it. We hook this into your existing scanners, whether you're using Qualys, Tenable, whatever it is. So we're not reinventing anything, we're just expanding on that reach. And this gives us that continuous data, which we combine with any live threat intel to spot what's actually being exploited. We go deeper than that too. We include containers, third-party systems, app-level vulnerabilities with static and dynamic application security testing built into the pipeline. We're able to surface those risks earlier in development. We're also adding early warning, flagging critical CVEs even before they show up internally so we can react quicker. And because none of this matters if the data is junk, we're constantly tuning for false positives and applying filters so teams only see what's real. By the time we finish this phase, we have visibility, clarity, and a clear line of sight into what needs to be actioned first. Prioritize, right? Once we have that visibility, the next step is where do we focus? Not all vulnerabilities are created equal. We all know this. So we use business risk scoring to prioritize these based on asset criticality, exploitability, exposure. That way we hit what actually matters. We also layer in that live threat intel. So if a CVE is actively being exploited, we'll bump it up. There's no waiting around. Compliance, obviously, that's baked into PCI, HIPAA, SOX. We align timelines and reporting with whatever applies to that environment. Everything gets routed to the right team automatically using tagging, and SLA enforcement keeps things moving. We learn as we go, right? So if a past incident does expose a gap, we tune the model and update the playbook so that the system gets smarter over time. Remediate. So once we prioritize all these risks, you got to move quick. We don't do ad hoc remediation. Everything runs through defined workflows, usually in ServiceNow. And those workflows are tailored by team and environment. So what works in cloud isn't going to work in on-prem and vice versa. We account for that. To keep it scalable, we set up a champion program, pulling in folks from security, IT, and DevOps to help us move things across the silos. We use playbooks for repeat issues, so we're not reinventing the fix every time. And if something truly can't be fixed, we've got a formal risk acceptance process that's governed, documented, and time-bound. We also validate closures. There's no trust me, it's fixed. If something lingers past its SLA, it's going to get escalated. For application-related vulnerabilities, the flow is a little different. We send the fix straight to the devs through that CI/CD pipeline. They own the code, so we'll just meet them where they work and make sure that they are the ones fixing these issues. And when something does break, whether it's in a real incident or a tabletop, we feed those lessons learned right back into the process so we're better next time. Reporting is where it all finally comes together. It's not just about a data dump, it's actually about showing progress and holding ourselves accountable and proving where we've actually reduced that risk. We track everything in real time, mean time to resolve, SLA compliance, threat response speed, and we split reporting by audience. So tech teams get what they need to operate, while the execs get a clear summary, posture trends, risk deltas, any compliance status that we need. We also shine a light on stuff that usually gets missed, like application vulnerabilities, CVE exposures, and anything outside of that server stack. Stakeholders get their monthly or quarterly briefings that are structured, audit ready, and mapped to any of the frameworks so that compliance is visible. It's not just checked off after the fact. We fold in all of our lessons learned from incidents too. What changed, what was improved, and how are we evolving the model or any of our playbooks. And finally, we report ROI in real terms, faster remediation, less exposures, quicker responses. That's what leadership wants to see, and what earns buy-in to keep these programs actually moving forward. So our team at Alcor operates in 6 distinct work streams. Our offerings can either fill in the gaps in your current security posture or replace your entire program altogether. I'll go into each one a little bit more in depth there. So operating systems and application vulnerabilities. With Armis, we're not guessing what's out there anymore. It gives us real-time asset discovery into on-cloud, prem, hybrid, and it uses AI to surface what's actually risky, not just what's noisy. We tie everything into ServiceNow so that when a vulnerability pops, it's auto-assigned, tracked with SLAs, and escalated anywhere it stalls. Armis helps us move faster by adding context around what actually matters. Every week we check in. Is it really fixed? Did it go to the right team? Did anything get closed too early? Armis flags anything that's off, and that keeps leadership out of the dark and risk from slipping through the cracks. Threat intelligence and CVE stream, so we're not waiting around for vulnerabilities to become a problem. Armis pulls in live threat intelligence from places like Mandiant and CISA, so when something starts getting exploited in the wild, we'll know about it early, and that gives us a head start. And we're not just buried in noise. Right? We pull CVEs from all sources, clean them up, dedupe them across tools, and only alert teams when something has actually changed. If the risk shifts, we'll act. Otherwise, there's no need for a fire drill, right? We track what matters most, not just what is loud. Our dashboards show us where we stand. We have coverage, trends, mean time to resolve, and we use custom watch lists here to stay focused on what's relevant in each of the tech stacks. Incident response and lessons learned. So when something goes wrong or almost goes wrong, we don't just move on from that. We run a very focused review. What got missed? What slowed us down? Who was supposed to own it but didn't? Right? We get these answers quick while they're still fresh in everybody's head. Then we fix the process, not just the symptoms. We update scoring models based on what actually got exploited, tweak the playbooks, and make accepted risk policies reflect the real-world scenarios, not just the theoretical ones. We do measure before and after. So the dashboards here show how posture changed and what got tightened up and what could potentially still be lagging. That way leadership sees progress and not just a lessons learned slide. Application security testing. This is where we bake security right into the pipeline. We drop static and dynamic application security tools directly into the CI/CD pipeline so that the devs catch these issues early before anything ships. It's just part of the build. It's not a bolt-on or an after-the-fact thing. Then from there, we make it smarter and faster. Right? Vulnerabilities get mapped to the OWASP top 10 and apply business risk, and then they're automatically ticketed in ServiceNow and routed to the right devs. There's no handoff, no bottlenecks. We're not just going to leave them hanging either. Obviously, right? We support with any hands-on remediation help that's needed. We'll track everything, the SLA performance, fix times, and the coverage, so that everybody's on the same page. When it comes to risk acceptance, we like to keep it clean and consistent. We use standardized templates that align with any internal policies so that everything is documented, defensible, and most importantly, audit ready. And we definitely don't let risks just linger. So every accepted risk runs through a full ServiceNow workflow from submission, approval, expiration, alerts. If it's out of date, it gets revalidated or retired. That's it. Leadership always knows what's on the table here too, right? So we roll all of it up into reports by environment. And if needed, we'll run formal risk boards so that security, IT, and the business is aligned on what risks are being accepted and why that risk was accepted. SSL discovery. So here, the entire lifecycle is automated in ServiceNow. Right? It tracks it all: submissions, approvals, expirations, revalidation. Nothing just sits in a drawer collecting dust here. The accepted risk isn't a free-for-all either. Right? We use standardized templates here, tied to all of your policies so that every decision is documented and audit ready. We roll up all of the active certs, expirations, and exceptions into dashboards as well, so the execs know exactly where things stand. With all that being said, our goal is to be able to change the trajectory of your vulnerability management process in 90 days. Right? So in the first 30 days, our focus is on establishing that visibility. That means setting up the scanning tools and making sure that asset discovery is working across all environments. We'll begin adjusting threat intel and enabling business risk scoring, so we're not just collecting data, we've started to understand the risk here. Ownership tagging and SLA definitions are introduced at this point, and we'll spin up early versions of the dashboards to give your teams visibility into what's been discovered so far. By the end of this phase, we have a working view of the environment, early risk insights, and the foundation for remediation all in 30 days. The second phase, though, this is where we start to apply pressure to the backlog. SLA-driven workflows are turned on at this point, and we start assigning these tasks to teams based on the business risk. This is also when the champion program activates, helping us drive that collaboration between teams. We'll deploy the playbooks for remediation and risk acceptance and begin validating closures for any high-risk items. At the same time, we're maturing our dashboards and reporting so they're more actionable and better suited for both the technical and leadership audiences. Here, the work starts moving. We're not just identifying risks, we're actually remediating and starting to track it. By the end of day 60, we're entered the maturity phase. Right? We've established a repeatable cadence. The SLA tracking is actually enforced, and the risk acceptance is standardized. Remediation by this point is flowing across the teams. We'll begin delivering stakeholder briefings, typically monthly or quarterly, and align those with any metrics, any compliance metrics that are required. We'll also introduce feedback loops from lessons learned, from incidents, reporting trends, and continuous tuning of detection and prioritization logic. At this stage, the program is not just functioning, it's maturing. Teams are working within a structured model, risk is trending downward, and we're able to report the progress in meaningful terms. So in just 90 days, your organization goes from a limited visibility to a functioning, measurable, and defensible vulnerability management lifecycle. Thank you everyone for your time today. We would love to schedule some time to talk one-on-one with anyone that has any more in-depth questions. Please feel free to reach out to us. We're now going to go live for some Q&A. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all. And it was an insightful webinar. There are a few questions that I'll get to in a moment. And as a reminder, please use the question section to ask a question on today's topic. All right, the first question that we have from our audience here is, how does Alcor's solution find all assets in the environment?
Yeah, I'll take that one real quick for everybody. So Alcor uses Armis's platform to find all the assets in any given network as long as those assets are connected. Armis Centrix uses a multi-pronged approach to find all connected assets through passive technology, which is really just listening to the traffic, understanding the connection between devices. It utilizes SNMP. We call it SNMP Mapper, and that walks the network infrastructure, actually pulling the ARC cache from the network gear, specifically the switches, routers, and pulling that ARC cache in, starting to understand what kind of devices are connected physically into your network. We also use Active Query, which pulls data directly from the asset by utilizing the native protocols of that asset to kind of really tickle the device enough to pull some additional information without causing any kind of problems with that device. That active query is something that we use a lot in the IoT and the OT specifically, because we don't want to flip those devices over. So utilizing the native protocol keeps it from causing any kind of issues. And then lastly, through integrations. And those integrations are working with the tools that you already have in place, like, for instance, EDR, or maybe your wireless LAN controller to pull additional information from the devices that it has already found, perhaps, to add more telemetry data, more intellect to those devices. That multi-pronged approach really not only just gives you the discovery of the device, but provides a full accounting of the devices. And it really just truly gives you the entire DNA of what that device is. And so that's what Alcor uses as the Armis Centrix platform to find those devices in your network.
Great. Thank you for taking that up, Terence. I think that was helpful for the audience right here. And the second question that we have is, how do you maintain the quality of my asset inventory?
I'll field that question. This is Brent Knipper. We really have three integrations that exist between ServiceNow and Armis, or it could be another CM2B. Many people have one, and they have a question about how do I get all of my assets? Well, that's really the power of Armis. It's available there when we put this capability that Terence talked about in place, looking across the network, plus integrations to any data source or discovery tools you have, such as SCCM, Intune, Jamf, ServiceNow Discovery, etc. We're able to take and receive user and device data from ServiceNow or another ITSM system of record. And then we can, because Armis has many integrations. And then we're able to receive also from ServiceNow application environment data. So those are the specific instantiations of your applications and relate them to your client business applications, wherever that master data is. And really the business application ID is the only tag a client fully using ServiceNow CMDB and Service Portfolio and ARMIS really needs. Many people have tag chaos going on, and our solution will help clean all that up. Once you have that, ARMIS is able to enrich up to 80 of the CMDB tables in ServiceNow. We find, however, that about 25 of these tables are what most customers use and need. And by detecting an asset as soon as 15 minutes, when anything comes into your environment, whether that's a smart light bulb, someone's brought in a USB drive or their Game Boy, and these are real world scenarios, we're able to know about that asset, butt it up against the 6 billion library of the ARMIS Intelligence Engine database, and we're able to make you aware of it in your system of record or system of preference in order to see that.
Great, thank you, Brent. And we have another interesting question, that you might want to take up, which is, can this solution replace my discovery tools?
That's a question that we do get almost in all cases. And in fact, many clients have many detailed RFP, RFI, RFQ questions about this. If we take a look at it broadly in the sense of a configuration management system, CMS, meaning anything that's important that I want to know about, track, maybe it's against IT change, I use it because of management, managing these things. I use it because it's critical around procurement or real cost, license costs, et cetera, or it's about the impact of this asset at any point in time, maybe just at the end of billing months or end of fiscal periods, or maybe critically during moratoriums for retail customers or manufacturing customers. We can help you understand this, and really it's a best position as a federated approach. You probably do want a CMDB of record, whether that's ServiceNow or BMC Helix or some other repository, maybe in a data lake or data warehouse, but you need to augment that. So the ideal scenario is where ARMIS is getting information and enriching an existing master CMDB. The other scenario where ARMIS can really help is to control or reduce your license costs, because you could choose in the real world scenario where you always will have unmanaged devices that you truly don't care about. You'll have those who are taken through the process to determine should they be managed, should they be under IT change, and then you'll have those in your official CMDB repository. If you have real license costs of license or MAC IP or other parameters in your system of record, ARMIS could be used to keep those that you want to know about but not actively using the data out of your CMDB or out of your license cost. So that is how we have come to probably the best architecture recommendation for our clients. ARMIS is probably not best used as a single CMDB. It could, however, do many things that a CMDB does. The better approach would be consider a federated approach.
Well, thank you so much, Brent. And the comment says that's helpful. And now I move on to another question that we just got. What's your current process when a critical CVE drops? Do you wait, escalate, or act immediately?
I think we wait, obviously, right? Isn't that the general dynamic? No, clearly, we act immediately on things like that, right? We're on top of any vulnerability managers, making sure that leadership has action plans to understand exactly, what these CVEs are doing, plans to roll out to any affected systems. And that's all based on the criticality that we had talked about before. Are these internet facing things? What's in production? We run it through all of the tests, dev. And then finally, we're going to do an analysis on that CVE, see if it's exploitable, if it has a fix, and then understand if any other systems are vulnerable. But in short, immediately, right? We don't let things like that wait.
Absolutely. All right. Another question that we have here is, how do you integrate with risk acceptance? Can you do this in your solution? is what somebody asked.
How do we integrate with risk acceptance? All right, so
Yeah.
the risk acceptance process, we integrate that by we work directly with the remediation teams. And you have to understand what the impact of actually applying these fixes are. Sometimes it can be more disruptive. We need to make sure that we're evaluating the team's capacity. Do they understand how to do this? How complex is that environment? And then from there, we need to understand, ultimately, do they have the ability to absorb the change without any disruption in their network? And if remediation isn't feasible, we have to find another way around that. These are things that can all be done with that tool.
Yeah, and this is Brent. I'll add that we also find that there needs to be triggers for risk acceptance, clear understanding of policy and procedures on when one must go to risk acceptance. We also have found that there's can be quite a long delay between the time you send someone into something into the risk acceptance process until it's actually approved in it. And then critical to us is a timeout, right? You can't stay in risk acceptance. You have clear end dates. We have customers who said you cannot be in more than a year. You cannot extend. It must be. So you've got to make sure that people are addressing the risk. Otherwise, I use the analogy of just pulling the curtain when a thief is sitting outside the curtain. They didn't go away. And then I'd like Terrence to speak about this whole topic in regard to OT, because it's a different scenario there when you talk about remediating or risk acceptance.
Yeah, Brent, appreciate it. And so when Brent's talking about risk acceptance, when you think about from the OT perspective, right, a lot of those devices are running old technology, Windows 7, but they can't pull that Windows 7 engineering workstation out because that Windows 7 engineering workstation is communicating to the PLCs that are running the robotics, running the pressure sensor valves, running the whatever kind of temperature valve or whatever it happens to be within the environment. And because those older PLCs communicate to that older Windows 7 workstation, you can't there is no remediation process, right? The remediation is some kind of compensating control. So that goes kind of back to that risk acceptance, exactly what Brent and Andrew is talking about. From an Armis perspective, and in the Viper product itself, what we do is we take an approach of making sure that we understand all the parties of responsibility. And what I mean by parties of responsibility, number one, who's actually pushing the ticket for the vulnerability to be either remediated or risk accepted or even mitigated in some form or fashion, right? Beyond that goes the person that's responsible for the actual remediation. And then the person of responsibility for the asset. Why do we have those two people? Because they could be different people when you think about it. If somebody's working on an application, they fix the application and they need the server to be rebooted, they have to go to the asset owner to have that done. And then lastly, in that group of people that Viper looks at is the safety or security officer, right? That security officer or safety officer is that person of responsibility to that who is going to accept that risk. If there is a compensating control in place, accept it, right? And so that's the approach that we take, is to make sure all parties involved know what's happening throughout that ticket. But in the world of the OT, it's usually going to be a risk acceptance for a compensating control or a mitigation that's already in place.
That's a good description for the question. So, Andrew, thank you so much for answering, and Brent and Terrence adding to it, making it more explanatory for our audience. So, I hope you got the answer to your questions. As a reminder, if you have any question or any follow-up question, please use the question section in the webinar dashboard, and we'll make sure to answer your questions. So, here we have last question with us, team. So, how long does it take to go from vulnerability detection to ticket assignment?
I can field that. Integrations with Armis run overnight. As I mentioned, over the wire or wireless, we may get information as fast as 15 minutes. If we typically will have switch listeners and on the tap ports in the network. And these integrations can run on demand, but from a ServiceNow into your ticketing system, or on a schedule. But we typically find that getting the data over there before each work shift or once a day is more than enough to meet this pace at which organizations could go. All of us know the problem today is there's too many security findings. What ARMIS and Alcor do is we elegantly roll them up into groups. So it can be a fixed group. This fix fixes all these assets. That would be the ideal way in an organization. But in reality, you find out that this fix may have to be done by 3 or 4 organizations, the cloud organization, the manufacturing organization, by business unit. But we are going to help you as clients continually get better. So we'll start where you are, take you on that journey. We have many techniques and methods. One may be just capacity based. What is your organization capable of? But the important thing that we provide is work on the most important thing, give you the ability to do this dynamic prioritization and get the information into the hands of the people so they can consume it in the easiest possible way and work in a simple of last in, first out.
And let me add to that real quick, because Brent really covered that in a lot of detail, and great job, by the way. All of that can be automated, right? Utilizing Viper from Armis Centric's tools, right? Viper can actually automate that process. So working with Alcor allows the Alcor team to understand if there's a certain set of circumstances or processes that take place that could automate the ticketing system so that if there was a specific vulnerability to an application or a specific vulnerability to a set of specific devices, we could, working with Alcor, set up those rules that would automate that process. So as soon as that critical came in, it automatically creates the ticket and sends it out to the business unit of responsibility in order for them to start that remediation process right away. So, the real answer is, as Brent alluded to, it takes, through that process, there's a lot of different ways that it can be done. If we automate that process, it could be almost real time.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's lots of things with campaigns, with policies that can be set up. It's really about the criticality of getting the work in the hands of the people that can do it, and we can rise it to the top of the list in real time. But we have to keep the organization, working through basically at full capacity. Whatever they can do, we want to keep the pipeline full.
Great. Thank you, team, for taking that question up. And okay, that brings us to the end of our webinar today. And we hope you found this information valuable and that it'll help you, stop chasing vulnerabilities and start securing your business. I'd like to extend my thanks to all the speakers, right? Special thanks to Terence for joining us from Armis. Thank you so much for taking our time and, doing this joint webinar with us. Also, thanks to our wonderful audience right here, right, who were quite engaging throughout the webinar. And thank you so much for all the questions and all. And with that, yes, hope to see you soon. And please join us for our next Alcor webinar. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.